I'm joined here today with Benedikt Sundermann, the recipient of 2018 OHBM Replication Award. Benedikt, thank you for joining us and congratulations on the award.
Thank you.
So the first question I want to ask you is, how would you describe this study if you would met a stranger in a bar?
There are currently efforts, there are previous studies where people have tried to apply artificial intelligence technologies like that are similarly used in spam filters or face recognition to functional brain imaging data, and in order to try and diagnose people with, for example, either depression compared to healthy controls. And in our study, we basically wanted to see if this replicates in a clinically more realistic sample that features heterogeneous comorbidity, heterogeneous age, sex, and so on, so demographical factors. And surprisingly, most of these previous results did not really replicate in this larger, more heterogeneous, more clinically realistic sample. Only when we looked at a subgroup of the people, we could replicate some models, but still at a diagnostic accuracy that would not be clinically useful.
I see. So that is quite a controversial statement, especially considering how much enthusiasm there is about neuroimaging methods and their application to the clinic. Did you experience challenges in publishing this work?
Yeah, definitely. Actually, I think this was, I hope I remember correctly, it was the 4th or 5th submission of this work when we finally got it published. Generally, when you try to publish a replication negative finding like this, you should be prepared to be interrogated much more critically by the reviewers. About the sample, about our methods, and so on. And but there was also kind of criticism that it's not really scientifically solid, I think. For example, there were comments like, okay, we know from previous studies that this works, so when you couldn't replicate it, this means you must have made a mistake, basically, things like that. One of the reviewers' comments as well. So.
I see, but you must have, in a way, anticipated that it's going to be somehow challenging. I want to understand a bit more what motivated you to do this wonderful work to begin with.
I have a clinical background in radiology, and I'm mostly interested in accurate diagnostic tools and to expand our spectrum of diagnostic tools that we can use in the clinic. And in mental disorders, we are usually limited to the exclusion of larger structural lesions, but we cannot really get diagnostic information about the actual disease mechanisms and disease correlates in these people. And so my main motivation was to work on these technologies and to improve these diagnostic imaging techniques based on functional imaging and machine learning. So the main motivation was improvement, basically.
I see. So after doing this, they say hindsight is 20/20. If you were to take a trip back to past in a time machine, what would you do differently, or what advice would you do to other people that are planning to do a replication study?
The first thing, you have to expect some kind of frustration. We did not expect that much frustration and that I experienced during this study. And when we tried to publish it, to just be prepared to it, and it'll probably be easier, I think. The other thing is, in a replication setting, you might be interrogated more strictly about your sample, about your analysis. So it will really make it easier to have a good structure of your analysis, your data. So I think this is one of the points you're also working on with your initiative. So I think this is really important. We should focus more on that.
Great. So, so what next for you? What are you excited about? What are you working on right now?
One thing I'm working on right now is not so much scientific, but it's one clinical thing is currently working on protocol optimization and protocol standardization from a clinical point of view. Scientifically, I'm currently interested in multimodal integration of functional and structural imaging data in diagnostic models. Yeah.
So do I understand correctly that the main implication of your finding is that resting state fMRI is not ready for clinical use?
I think it is currently not ready for clinical use, but I think it is important that I do not think that this is an endpoint. I think it did not show that there isn't any kind of information about depression in this data, but we looked at it with machine learning techniques that were available maybe 2 or 3 years ago, and there's been a lot of improvement in this field. And also I think the current categorization of patients of diseases in mental disorders, just saying somebody has unipolar depression or not, for example, may not be really sufficient to capture the wide spectrum and the large heterogeneity of these patients. So there might be room for further improvement on that side as well.
So you think that the main problem with lack of diagnostic ability are noisy labels, basically poor definitions of the phenomena that we're trying to predict?
I think it is at least one major determinant. Yeah.
So as a clinician, how do you improve the classification of mental disorders?
Currently the main classifications are based on clinical interviews. You have to ask standardized questions, and you have like a checklist and see if certain criteria are fulfilled or not. Maybe we can use biological information itself to further subcategorize patients with mental disorders, and also maybe to see some more commonalities or links between those different mental disorders as well.
That sounds very exciting. The OHBM Replication Award will run next year, so I encourage everyone to submit their replication studies and see you next year.